welcome to Freedom Fighters Code Gray, a show where we discuss human trafficking, an issue that's happening in our community, in our backyard. We often think about human trafficking as something that happens in other countries, in other places, but it's a huge problem right here in Ontario. In fact, children as young as 12 years old are being lured and recruited for the purposes of exploitation. And over 90% of people who are trafficked in Canada are from within Canada's borders. So today, I'm really excited that Laura has joined me on the show. Thank you so much for being here, Laura.
You're welcome. I'm glad to be here.
So Laura is an advocate for justice, and she's an advocate to support survivors of human trafficking. So Laura, in your own words, what is human trafficking?
Human trafficking, in my own words, would be the slavery of people for the purpose of child labor or sexual exploitation in order to exploit people.
And when we're talking about Ontario and human trafficking, what is the most common forms of human trafficking here in our communities?
In my understanding, it is sexual exploitation of young women and even women up to their 30s and into their 40s, but primarily with teenagers from the average age is about 12.
And when did you first hear about human trafficking?
I first heard about the issue on a Wednesday.
I love that you remember the day.
I do. It would just seared itself in my mind. My husband had just had, he'd fainted at church, and they brought in an ambulance, and then he decided to not go with the ambulance, but he would see his family doctor. So he went to see his family doctor on the Monday, and his doctor said, "Oh, I think you had an anxiety attack. Come back and maybe we'll see you on Wednesday for lunch. Can you just meet with me for lunch? I want to talk to you about something." And so he meets with his doctor, and he comes home and he tells me that his doctor had said to him, "I heard you guys just bought a farm. Would you consider converting your barn into a home for survivors of human trafficking?" I'm like, what is that? I had never heard of it before. So I started doing research about the issue and finding out just how bad it really was. So for me, it was just something that grew inside of me more and more as I found out more, and I just felt that I was sort of directed to consider opening a home. And so that vision just grew and grew and grew, and to where it is today, and we can get into that in a little bit, but yeah.
So when someone approached you with this and you started doing research and learning about human trafficking, what was kind of like the first step that you took as an advocate? What is the first thing that you got involved in and that you did?
Okay, so primarily because my husband was not supportive of having a home for survivors of human trafficking on our farm. I had to go with that, and I pursued an initiative with a number of other people that we all together started an organization called Beacon of Hope. And so Beacon of Hope, for the first year, there were maybe 15 of us that gathered together to fight human trafficking. We want to do something, because a number of them had been to Cambodia and seen the travesties of sexual exploitation there with the children. And so they had come back to Canada, but wanting to do something here, not realizing still to the full extent of how much it's impacting our Canadian girls. And so that was quite telling for all of them to return and just do more research here. And we were meeting together for about a year, and then finally not really sure exactly what we were supposed to do, but wanting to do something. And a local high school called and asked if we would do a presentation for them to their students. And so we showed up at about 8 o'clock and did 4 presentations till about 2:30. You could hear a pin drop with these students, and we didn't have anything formal. We showed a video just of one woman's story, and but primarily it was just my girlfriend and I at that time in the classroom. We just talked, and someone had warned us and said, okay, the students will be coming in and out of the class, they'll be on their phones, they'll probably be talking, just try to ignore them. I'm like, okay, but honestly, it was so silent when we were discussing this issue. So you could tell that it hit close to home with them. So that was our first experience with something of substance of what we could do. And it really morphed from there into what Beacon of Hope became, which was a team of people that would go into high schools. We ended up going to universities. We attended a church up here in Barrie to present to a seniors group. It just became quite a bit more extensive than what we were originally thinking, I think.
That's so amazing. It's so neat that this group of people came together with a shared vision and a shared passion to stand up for something that they knew and understood to be unjust in our world, right? And began by doing a presentation, and then that kind of grew into doing all these opportunities to speak and raise awareness about human trafficking.
Yeah.
Could you maybe share a little bit, why is it so important to do those presentations? Why is it so important to educate young people and our general public and everyone about human trafficking? What role does that play in fighting human trafficking?
I think education can be prevention. Especially in the high schools. So we went to one particular high school that we went to the first time. I just remember a teacher just sitting there during the presentation with his jaw dropped the entire time. He could not believe that we had local stories. And we had been meeting together as a team and doing presentations for probably a couple years, and then we were introduced to a young survivor. And we invited her to share her story. And every time she shared her story, it was like, it's sad to think, but we actually had like girls running from the room because they were just, it was either they recognized that it was happening to them or happening to a close friend, or it hit home with a lot of these young women. And her story in particular, she was so met with compassion from these students that it actually was a very healing time for her to share her story and just be understood. But at the same time, knowing that people are compassionate and they want to do what they can to help others. So prevention was the primary reason why we go into universities and high schools, and just praying that it does not happen to our local girls.
It makes me think of the importance of stories and the power of storytelling, not only to change mindsets, change attitudes towards something, but also like how healing sharing your own story can be, and how empowering it can be to share your story and then find ways that other folks maybe resonate with what you're sharing, and to be able to support other people in exiting situations of exploitation. So after your involvement in Beacon of Hope, what was your next step in the fight against human trafficking?
So my next step was more research and making connections, doing networking. And so around that time, this was probably about 4 years ago, maybe 5 years ago, I met up with a young woman named Tamea Nagy. And she and I over the years have become really close. But at the beginning, she had a dream to have a retreat for survivors of human trafficking. And so we met together with a number of other people and tried to push that forward. And it took quite a while. And things didn't really seem to be coming together for it, but she and I would still continue to meet, and I'd try to push things forward if I could. And so in the end, it just worked out that I said, you know what, why don't you just use my house? Like, we'll do it at my place, and we can, and like I'll clear it out of my family, and and we'll do that, go that route. And it was a turning point for me, because I had gotten to know a few survivors before that, but this just really, it made me see the need in each of their lives for help, for someone to come alongside them and say, I support you where you're at, and I want to take you from there if you're willing, and help you into a future that is bright and healthy and safe. And so that was really the stepping stone for my next initiative, which, so that was in 2017 that we did the retreat. It it was beautiful. Like, there were so many moments about it that were just like astounding. And
can you share a little bit about, like, so what did the retreat look like? And actually, I just want to comment, because when you're sharing, I'm just so grateful for your willingness to take that step, to open your home, to invite people in, and to recognize that each person is an individual with unique needs, and your heart to see individuals find healing and safety and restoration. And so just, thank you for taking that step to open your home. But what did that look like? What did it look like to invite people in? What was the retreat? What is a retreat for individuals who have been impacted by trafficking?
Sure. So it started out with them coming on a Thursday morning, and then they stayed through till Sunday afternoon. So we had everything from finance classes and talking about money and their view of money. And Tamara was leading all of these classes. She's had enough exposure to survivors in Canada, having been trafficked herself from Hungary, but having enough exposure within dealing with survivors here that she understands their mindset and a lot of the things that they're dealing with. So we did that. We thought we would do cooking classes. There wasn't really interested in cooking classes, but there was a lot of really good food, so that was helpful. And we did a self-defense class on the backyard. We learned a lot through the process of what was overwhelming to them. And initially, we were going to bring in a lot of people to help and to make it work smoothly. And then we recognized that the girls were just really apprehensive about meeting new people all throughout the weekend. So we shut everybody down, told them not to come, and just left it with a few core main people. Yeah, facilitators, exactly. Someone opened their store to us, and it's called Maurice's store down in Cambridge, and she opened it up to us to come in and look through all the clothes that they had set aside for these girls, and then these girls went home with these clothes. Like, it was beautifully overwhelming, but in a beautiful way. And just because we were out in the country, the girls could go for walks, and a number of them did bird watching, and it was like the whole weekend, it really seemed to be bathed in a beautiful way, which was really inspiring.
Yeah. Thank you, Laura, for just sharing those steps that you took to fight human trafficking and the initial stages of when you learned about trafficking, getting involved in Beacon of Hope, and then opening your home to have this survivor retreat where folks could take classes and learn about ways that they can heal and move further along in their journey to restoration. So we're going to take a short break, and we'll be back in a few minutes to continue learning about the ways that Laura is an advocate for survivors of human trafficking.
What kind of show do you want to see on Rogers TV? What interests you? Log on to rogerstv.com, fill out a show proposal, and tell us about your segment idea. We want to know what you want to see. Rogers TV, only on Rogers.
It gets you out into the community, and you meet so many new people and experience so many new opportunities, and builds my self-esteem and my confidence level. What I've learned here as a new volunteer is different skills that I thought I would never even be interested in learning. I'm Chantal McCush, and I am a Rogers TV volunteer.
After involving Nuha in this program, she feels very confident. Here you have a lot of opportunity.
I learned a lot of stuff, like being kind, and I'm more open-minded.
And welcome back to Freedom Fighters Code Gray, a show where we discuss human trafficking, an issue that's impacting our communities right here in Ontario. Today I have with me Laura, who's an advocate for survivors of human trafficking. So Laura, I'm just so grateful that you're on the show today. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
So Laura was sharing with us just her first step getting involved in human trafficking after she first heard about this injustice. She started raising awareness through doing education in schools and community groups, and then she opened up her home to have a survivor retreat within with a survivor, Tamaya. So Laura, after you did that retreat with Tamaya, what was the next step that you took to continue being an advocate for individuals who have been impacted by trafficking?
Okay, so my next step really was, had sort of started a number of months before the retreat even, and just in my head, and the process of how it would work, how it would play out, and that was to open an online bakery where I could employ survivors of human trafficking as well as sell, it was organic at the time, we're not solely organic now, but organic baking to the general public. But I had to do it in my own way too, something that I could do that was sustainable. I've got 5 kids, and so just managing that was gonna be a bit of work, and I knew that. But at the same time, so the Granary, which is the name of the bakery, has become a source for providing finances as well for, I'll get into that, Elora House, and for Seeds. So because I didn't have those things established at the time, I just said, I want to provide finances for a home for survivors of human trafficking someday. And with that kind of idea in the back of my mind, we moved forward. And so we opened in September of 2017. And one of the girls who was at the retreat, she became a primary baker with me, which was really exciting for me to work with her and get to know her better, and to know her skill set, but also more about who she is. And then we did Christmas cookies at Christmas time, and we were able to employ 6 survivors, which was really neat. Yeah. And learning a process through that of them committing and then not showing, just for various reasons. And this is, again, my process in learning to work with survivors of the various levels of trauma that they go through, and what they can handle and what they can't handle. And some days they just can't handle coming into work and being with other people or making the effort to get to work. It's not, I don't think it's being at work, because they all admit they enjoy that. But I think it's the process of getting there that is oftentimes stifling for them.
I understand for individuals who have been trafficked, there's a number of mental health conditions that someone could experience after being trafficked, like complex PTSD, depression, and anxiety. So I can understand why that would be really challenging to, come to the bakery at a certain set time if that day they're feeling triggered with complex PTSD. So in what ways is the bakery empowering and allowing individuals who have been impacted by trafficking to flourish, or to find their unique giftings, or to receive the finances that they need to continue in their healing journey?
For me, a primary way of them growing and maturing in just their process is to actually connect them with mentors. So a lot of our people that work in the granary are volunteers, and so they come with the understanding that they're going to be baking, but they're also going to be rubbing shoulders with these girls, and we've seen a lot of positive things come out of that, as they recognize that they can work with people they don't know, and it doesn't have to be over the top for them. They can work through a process. And there are some times where they're just like, you know what, I just need to sit out for a little bit and then I'll come back at it. But they're interested too in their own process of moving ahead and gaining employment. I don't see them as forever employees of the granary, but I see this as an opportunity to be like a launch pad for them, of getting into other areas of life that they can begin the process of working with people they don't know, or being told a job that they're not familiar with, and working through that. One of our girls that had worked with me from the beginning too, I sort of laugh because now she works as a baker for Tim Hortons, and full time.
Wow.
Which,
incredible.
Like, what else could I ask for? Is that she finds fulfillment in doing a job and that she's able to keep it. So I'm, hugely encouraged by the steps that these girls are taking.
And gaining the vocational training and skills that are necessary to then take that step to independent living and to obtain a job and to have a safe space to work through employable skills and working with new people and building relationships are also essential in someone's healing process.
All of that.
Yeah, to empower people to live up to their full potential of who they want to be in their design and purpose for life.
Right.
So what does the granary and bakery look like? Like, what kind of baked goods are you doing?
Okay.
What kind of, like, how does it function? Is there a physical place that people could go visit the bakery?
Yes, I get asked that regularly. Oh, I want to come see how how things work. I'm like, yeah, well, so right now we actually are baking out of Heritage College Kitchen. That we have an unwritten agreement with them that we can bake every Wednesday afternoon, and then our baking, or prepare everything Wednesday afternoon, and then our baking is done Friday mornings. For right now, we've sort of moved away from just doing baking for the public, and we've started baking for a certain organization called the Sustainable Market, and so they do all the background, they get all the orders, they just tell us how much we have to bake, and then when we're supposed to bring it to a certain place, which is every Friday afternoon. So it works out well, I think, for us, just again, for where I'm at, not being able to do everything.
None of us can do everything, right, Laura? But what I love about your story and what you're sharing is you're a mom of 5, right? 5?
Yes.
And many other things in life. You're a friend, you're a wife, you're all these different roles, but at the same time, you do the next right thing, right? And so starting the bakery was the next right thing to empower people to have the skills that they need to get jobs and to continue in their healing. And I think that's so beautiful. So you mentioned a few times now about a Laura house and seeds, and how the granary was kind of set up with the hopes of creating this house for individuals who have been impacted by trafficking. So can you tell me about Allura House?
Sure.
What is it? How did it get started? And what is the vision and your dream for this house?
Okay, so when it came back to, it all comes back to really what the doctor said that first day when he started the whole thing by talking to my husband about having a home for survivors. That vision never left my heart, my soul. And it has morphed into other things that I think are intricate and intricately involved in the process. Elora House came about because I had a desire to see a home that had sort of 3 stages of homes. First stage, where the women would come off the street or through victim services or police, they'd be directed to the home, and they'd do an intake form, and it would be determined before they even got there that they really wanted help and healing to move forward in the journey. Because one of the things that I've learned is that there is a process of getting out and then getting back in, and then getting out and then getting back in. And oftentimes they think they're getting back in voluntarily, but then someone comes along and takes that voluntary desire away from them and puts them under their control again. So there's a blurred line between prostitution and human trafficking. I'm not going to get into that today, but for the girls that I've worked with, I've seen that as well, so that they've been in that flux situation.
Yeah, and it can be really difficult for someone to exit a situation of exploitation, because we know often someone is being recruited and targeted by someone who poses as a romantic partner, trusted friend, or boyfriend. So, Laura, in terms of this house and what you're thinking in your dreams for it, when the doors open, what does that home look like? So you mentioned that there'd be a first stage housing, second stage housing, third. Where are you in that process?
Okay, so Allura House came about as a collaboration between a woman named Louisa Krause and myself. When I met her, she had a huge desire to help women initially, right off the street, detoxing, all that kind of thing. That wasn't so much my goal, but I saw it as a need, and because that's the very first step of their process. The second step is the second stage, and that's where they would live in a house for longer term, like up to a year, year and a half, where they would move through a series of phases within that stage, and each phase is dependent on the one before. So the level of learning, whether it's through education or whether it's through job training or whether it's through just financial classes, or there's all these sequence of events that everything is very intentional. Nothing is imposed on the women, but everything is very intentional on continuing to help them move ahead in their journey towards being independent and not needing to return to a life of selling their body for paying their bills. And so then after stage 2, there would be stage 3, and that's not fully developed yet, but it's in the understanding that they, like Seeds, which is the name of the organization, that would would have a division of Elora House, as well as the Granary and Beacon of Hope. They would all be divisions of Seeds, and Seeds stands for Supporting Every Eve's Daughter Safely. And so within that would be stage 3 as well, which doesn't have a name as per se yet. Second stage, we determined that it would be called Eve's House. So there's a Elora House, Eve's House, and a stage 3 home, where Seeds would pay a subsidized income for them initially, and then slowly back away from paying for housing for them, but just still offering support.
So where are you at right now in this housing project and dream that you have for first stage, second stage, third stage housing? And where does Elora House exist in Ontario? And same with the Granary.
Okay. Oh yes, right. So Elora House is located in Wellington County, and it is a safe house, so we're not divulging the actual location of it. And the Granary exists at Heritage College, so it's
Cambridge, Ontario.
Cambridge, Ontario. Sorry, yes, that's right.
Yeah, and so with Elora House, when do your doors open to folks?
Okay, we had aimed to open last fall, and we ran into some hiccups, but we are actually ready to open our doors now. Everything is, like, there's food in the pantry, there's dishes in the cupboard, there's bedding on the beds. We are all set to open, and it's just a matter of receiving our first young woman. Yeah. So it's very exciting.
That's really exciting. I'm super just grateful for you taking the time to share with us today your story of how you got involved in the fight to end human trafficking. And really quickly, could you share one way that someone could get involved in taking that first step of fighting human trafficking?
Sure. I think if people could do just the next step. So if you're interested in the issue of human trafficking, do your research. Find out a lot more about it. And other ways, there are so many organizations like Fight for Freedom and other organizations that are doing a lot of good work. And if your desire is to help in some way, look at what's in your hands. For me, I enjoy baking, and that was the primary reason for starting a bakery.
Well, thank you so much, Laura, for taking the time to be on the show today. Thank you, viewers, for tuning in. And we hope that we'll catch you next week on Freedom Fighters Code Gray. If you know someone that's in a situation of exploitation, that is being trafficked, and they're in immediate danger, please call 911. Otherwise, please call our Canadian Human Trafficking Hotline at 1-833-900-1010. Again, that's 1-833-900-1010. Thanks so much, and we hope you tune in next week.
So because I didn't have those things established at the time, I just said, I want to